Managing vegetation is an essential part of any railroad maintenance program, and an effective way to control that vegetation is through the application of approved herbicides by trained professionals. But why is it important to control weeds in railroad yards and rights of way? And why use herbicides? What are the benefits of using them to get rid of weeds? Are there any precautions we must take in working near them? These are important questions, and in the next few minutes, we'll look at some of the answers. There are a number of good reasons for controlling weeds. The Federal Railroad Administration, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, and other regulatory agencies, as well as certain labor agreements, require the railroads to provide a safe working environment, which would include proper vegetation management. Also, railroads have to serve as good neighbors with nearby property owners and the communities they operate in. A railroad can't be a good neighbor if it allows unsightly weeds to grow out of control on its properties. What's more, in some states and counties, controlling weeds is the law. Why? Because depending on the weed species and where they're growing, they can create serious hazards for you and the public at large. For example, when weeds build up in the berm or ballast area, they lead to serious drainage problems. Natural water drainage paths are obstructed, trapping moisture within the stone on the track bed. Over time, this moisture will deteriorate the tie. During periods of heavy rainfall, standing water can even destabilize the entire roadbed, leading to tie movement and washout. This can lead to potential operating hazards. It could even lead to a derailment. Poor drainage also means that costly, time-consuming tamping and maintenance cycles must be increased. When weeds along the right-of-way die, they lay the foundation for a potentially devastating fire. A single spark can spell disaster for the railroad and nearby property owners. Many states, aware of this hazard, have laws requiring railroads to keep rights-of-way free of weeds. In an environment where trains are constantly on the move, the condition of the roadbed is a critical factor in maintaining a safe working environment. Obviously, no engineer or crew member can operate a train safely when lines of sight are obscured by vegetation. But roadbed vegetation causes another hazard: reduced traction. Weeds and brush between the engine and rail affect both acceleration and braking. Wheels can slip, forcing a loss of control during an emergency. Overgrown track beds make it difficult for track, bridge, and signal inspectors to do their jobs. Broken rails, severed wires, deteriorated ties, and missing bolts can't be seen when they're covered with weeds. Following the law and being a good neighbor is important. But remember that the most important reason for weed control is safety. Safety for the operating crews, safety for the track and yard crews, and safety for the general public. No one wants to work around such noxious plants as poison ivy or stinging nettles, nor should anyone with allergies be needlessly exposed to ragweed. But weeds also create other hazards as well. Excessive vegetation is difficult to walk through. Vines and other tall weeds mask objects that can make you slip, trip, or fall. And in a railroad environment, such a fall can result in serious injury. Switches tangled in weeds are difficult, if not impossible, to throw. Dealing with a rail pile, stockpile, or fueling station infested with weeds is an unpleasant challenge. Vines are a particular nuisance. Some hardy varieties can take over an entire area. And then there's pest problems. Unchecked, uncontrolled vegetation is a natural home for mice, rats, and snakes. It's also a breeding ground for mosquitoes, hornets, bees, ticks, and spiders. No one should have to deal with distracting pests, particularly when trains are moving about. Operating crews, drivers, and pedestrians must be able to see each other clearly at railroad crossings, In fact, many states have laws addressing crossing visibility. Now that you know why it's important to control weeds on railroad properties, let's look at the how part of the problem. What methods are available for controlling vegetation, and what are their advantages and disadvantages? When you come right down to it, there aren't too many choices for controlling unwanted vegetation. For railroad properties, there are two basic options. You can either cut them down or control them with herbicides. Brush cutters, weed cutters, and mowers only provide a temporary solution to the problem. After being cut back or mowed, weeds can quickly return. Mowing may be impractical under certain situations. They don't always have the flexibility needed to cut berm, ballast, and yard areas. And weeds can be persistent. Even if a frequent mowing schedule is maintained, patches of weeds will grow back quickly and thickly. That's why regular applications of approved herbicides is an essential part of any railroad vegetation control program. All of us owe a lot to today's modern herbicides. You could say that chemical weed control is one of the success stories of the 20th century. Without modern agricultural chemicals, farmers could not produce the high yields essential to feed the people of the world. Most of today's herbicides were developed for food production. They are strong enough to kill or stunt unwanted weeds without harming the primary crop or the farmer applying the herbicide. In addition, they must break down quickly so people and animals eating those crops aren't exposed to any harmful chemicals. For these reasons, extensive research and testing is done before a herbicide is placed on the market. It's one thing to be effective for weed control. It's another to assure that they pose no danger to humans or animals, either by contact or inhalation.
I'm often asked the question, how toxic are commonly used herbicides? Herbicides go through extensive testing prior to full registration for use in the environment to show that they have very low toxicity. Compared with commonly used household products like cleansers or cleaners, the toxicity comparisons for the herbicides show that the herbicides have very low toxicity. Translated to use out into the environment, if the herbicides are used according to label recommendations, they pose little danger to the applicator or to the environment.
The crews who apply these herbicides take extensive training to qualify for state certification, and much of their training deals with safety. No matter where or how they spray, application crews take special precautions to assure worker safety. They will not spray under adverse weather conditions or in sensitive areas. Brief exposure to herbicides won't be hazardous to your health, but it's still wise to avoid unnecessary contact with them. Under normal conditions, your everyday safety equipment provides adequate protection. That isn't always possible. When sprayers pass through an area, residues can remain on switches, rails, and other parts. What can you do to avoid unnecessary exposure? Here are some things to remember when a sprayer is operating near you. Avoid being sprayed directly. If a sprayer is coming toward you, move away from it. If you accidentally come in contact with the spray, don't panic. Just wash the exposed area with soap and water. If you need to work in an area that's just been sprayed, allow the spray to dry before re-entering. How long this takes depends on the relative humidity and temperature. Drying usually takes just a few minutes. Even when the herbicide is dry, it's still a good idea to minimize your exposure. Traces of herbicides can get on your hands during switching or other operations. When that happens, wash your hands. After working in a treated area, don't eat or smoke until your hands are clean. Whenever possible, take preventive measures before crews begin spraying. Inform the applicators of special conditions in the area to be sprayed. Point out sections where spraying should be avoided. Tell them when and where yard and track crews will be working. All these tips are worth keeping in mind, but when in doubt, use common sense. When spraying is being done in your area, don't overreact. Simply try to minimize contact with the chemical. Let it dry after it's been applied. Wash up if any herbicide gets on your skin. These simple precautions are only minor inconveniences when compared to the serious problems caused by uncontrolled vegetation. Thanks to the professional applications of herbicides in rail yards and rights of way, railroads are a more efficient and safer place to work.